Coming and first, if you'd all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will you please call the roll?
Mayor Knudsen?
Here.
District 1 Morset?
Here.
District 2 Brokaw?
Here.
District 3 Bernard?
Here.
District 4 Wyland?
Here.
District 5 O'Malley?
Here.
District 6 Burchell?
Here.
At this time, we take comments and suggestions from citizens present. Anyone that's here who would like to speak on any item that's not on tonight's agenda but might have an impact on the city of Hudson or come before the council at a future meeting, this is your chance to speak. Is there anyone here who would like to address the council tonight? Anyone here like to speak tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I have an announcement to make. Received word today from Japan that the city of Hudson has been selected to host the 2011 Pee Wee International Friendship Hockey Tournament. Those of you that were on the council a couple years ago, remember we put in a bid and we agreed to let Japan host it. So summer of 2011, approximately 300 skaters from around the world will be coming here with their families. A lot of them will have their families. So we'll have a formal announcement in June, but I just wanted to share that news. They just announced it today over there, so it'll be exciting for the community.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council tonight on any item that's not on tonight's agenda? We'll move on then to our consent agenda. If you'd please read those items.
To approve the regular meeting minutes of April 20th, 2009, annual organizational minutes of April 21st, 2009, and special meeting minutes of April 27th, 2009. To approve claims for payment in the amount of $301,436.66. A detailed description is available in the clerk's office on request. To approve the updated job descriptions for the gardener and lead gardener positions as submitted, and approve a 50-cent per hour pay adjustment for the lead gardener. To approve changes to the employee handbook regarding insurance in Chapter 9, Section 9, and to Chapter 10, travel meetings as submitted.
Can we pull that one, please?
To approve the payment of $208 for half the cost of an additional room darkening shade for council chambers. To approve accepting the $53,579.54 DNR grant funds for improvements at Prospect Park. To place on file the quarterly reports of the library director, semi-annual report of the community development director, and the community access board minutes of April 28, 2009, the Board of Zoning Appeal minutes of July 23, 2008. That is all.
I might point out that the library director, Linda Donaldson, is here tonight. And so while we have that on the consent, if anyone would like to ask her anything or hear from her, we could remove it. Otherwise, she submitted a very detailed report.
Mr. Mayor, can you pull 7 from
Sure.
The grant for Prospect Park?
Sure. Any other changes?
Move to approve then.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Brokaw? Bernard?
Yes.
Burchell?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Morset?
Yes.
And the consent agenda is then approved. The next item is the rezoning request by Blue Jay Properties LLC to rezone the properties at 653 to 661 Banterra Lane from R1, one family residential district, to RM1, multiple family residential district, part of section 32, T29N, R19W, Town of Hudson, ordinance number 7-09. Denny Darnold is here to tell you about this issue.
The committee recommendation is, and the Extraterritorial Plan Committee and the Plan Commission recommends approval of the rezoning at 653 to 661 Banterra Drive from R1, one family residential district, to RM1, multiple family residential district. Ordinance 7-09, which may be considered for first reading or approval tonight or disapproval is the ordinance for consideration. Essentially, this area is located immediately to the east of Hudson Chrysler dealership. It's an area that was originally shown on the city comprehensive plan as commercial, highway commercial. When the Banterra subdivision was developed for commercial, this area was not requested to be annexed. There's 4 houses in this particular area. There's one additional house to the north that is still not in the city of Hudson. That area, the 4 houses are the area, the 4 southerly houses, excuse me, are the area that's being requested for rezoning. In my opinion, this area is, because it was not developed as part of the overall Banterra commercial development, it has a limited area, has topographic considerations, and in my opinion is better served to be developed as multiple family residential. So my recommendation was to go to the multiple family residential district, and also has been supported by the Extraterritorial Zoning Committee and also the Planning Commission. Be pleased to answer any questions.
Anyone have a question? Yes.
2 questions. A 54 unit on a septic system, is that correct?
That's correct.
And wouldn't we kind of be thinking that this is spot zoning?
Well, there's no definitions for spot zoning, Randy. You have to understand that this is a rezoning. We're not approving that 54-unit development tonight. This consideration is purely a zoning issue, where the zoning on the property would be multiple family. At a later time, that issue would be taken up by the Extraterritorial Committee or the Town of Hudson. If it requires a conditional use permit, then it goes to the Extraterritorial Board and then to the Common Council. So we would have another look, but at this point, the issue tonight is the zoning and not the consideration of a specific proposal.
Any other questions for Denny?
I think Mr. Grekoff is in the audience tonight. I think he might be able to address that issue of the septic system for you. He and I have talked about that.
Would you like to hear?
Well, briefly. I don't need a dissertation. Just briefly.
Okay, I have gone through the whole process of the design of the septic system and all this. I think probably also you ran into that same question when the elementary school was back and forth and weighing the same issues. There's 7 acres here that we're dealing with. It's not a city lot size situation. If you had the same number of homes, single-family homes on that land, in other words, in my subdivision to the east is Windsor Heights. Those are all 1-acre lots. Those 1-acre lots could each have a 4-bedroom home on it, for example. You could end up with, and sewer systems are designed by number of bedrooms. Okay, that's how you size these things. You could end up with as many bedroom count on for 7 acres or 7 lots, 7 houses, as you would have with this multifamily project. It has been designed. It's already easily can handle this number of units and bedroom counts.
Okay. I guess if we're not getting into that whole detail, I won't ask any further questions. But thank you. I'll wait until the next time around, if there is, I guess.
I'm glad to get into more detail, but that's up to,
Well, as long as you're here, let me, so you don't have to get up again. Anyone else have a question for Mr. Grekoff? Yes.
Just a
Mr.
technical
Malley.
one. Is it 54 units or 58? It's printed both ways.
Oh, a part of it is both ways, and part of this whole thing is bedroom count. Some of these units will be 2 bedrooms, and some will be 1 bedroom, and some will be the memory care, which is like a hospital room. Exactly how you count that is in question, but it's it could be 60 bedroom count. So
it's
bed count.
54 units and variable bed count.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, actually 58 units and bedroom count, whatever, back and forth.
Okay, it says 54 here, but okay.
All right, but that does go to the point of we aren't approving the facility
Right.
tonight, we're approving the zoning.
Yep.
So we don't need to split hairs about which it would be. Other questions? General concept of, all right. Then how about for Denny? Do you have other questions for Denny?
This, whether somebody put in a 2-story house or a 3-story house, where this facility, wouldn't the challenges outlined by the person who wrote this letter be the same?
Well, the same height restrictions, where single family or multiple families, both 35 feet height as far as our zoning is concerned. So whereas in a multiple family residential district or a single family, what we call one family residential district, the height limitation is the same.
Denny, the letter from Larry Mastella mentions that the construction will change the existing natural slope behind his house and could cause major erosion on our property. Could you comment on that?
Well, at the point that a project would be reviewed, we'd have to take a look at that. Certainly, any project that would do grading on that site, we would want to be particularly careful in regards to that. From a city standpoint, you cannot grade on slopes greater than 25%. If they're sewered, if the project would be on municipal sewer, you cannot grade on slopes greater than 20%. So that's one limiting factor, but regardless, that would be an issue that we'd want to be careful to look at.
Thank you.
All right. The Denny's recommendation was approval. And the Plan Commission looked at the Extraterritorial Plan Committee and the Plan Commission have both discussed this and both ultimately recommended approval. Yes, sir.
I have a question, excuse me for, I have a question for either you or Alan or both if you care to take it. You both voted no on this plan at Plan Commission. Can you elaborate on your reasoning?
You want to go first, or shall I?
Go ahead.
Well, the reason I voted no that night is we're probably 60 to 80 feet to 100 feet from sewer and water right there. But after reviewing the situation and looking at it again, I've changed my mind. I'm in support of the project. I think he had approached the city 2 years ago about coming into the city, to annexing the city, and was told we weren't interested. So he went to the city, to the town of Hudson. If I'm saying this wrong, please correct me. And got them to agree to a multifamily units there. And then again, it went to the Extraterritorial Committee, and it was voted unanimously. And he does not, we cannot force him to come into the city. It would have to be at his request. And he, at this point, has done all the work on the sewer system, the water system, the fire protection system that's in the thing, or in the building. And I think it's a great use for the project, or for the piece of property. It makes a lot of sense to go there. The question I had, whether it should be in the city or should be in the township. And I've been able to see myself clear of saying I'm okay with it in the township.
Township or in the city?
Township. I'm okay with that now.
Okay,
Because
so.
he does not want to be annexed into the city.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I've had my problems with this, but it was never with the developer or with this particular use of the land. It's more of a process argument, actually.
Okay.
And in the end, I hate to see him trapped between two governments, unable to do anything with the land, and that's the worst example of government. The town of Hudson has gone through a lot of discussion, a lot of work, developing a new type of zoning that they've never had before. I don't know that they'd like it if you called it spot zoning, but they did it in response to the request for this property and created a category that they didn't have before, and that will only apply to areas such as this that are adjacent to the city. It wouldn't allow it anywhere else unless it was adjacent to the city. And so as such, I think if we had it all to do over again in the future, it would be best if this type of property and this type of use was done on land that was annexed into the city. Our new comprehensive plan, which is in draft form right now, has a statement in there that urban type uses in areas immediately adjacent to the city should not be developed unless they annex. That's in draft form. If you don't agree with that, you should say so before we approve it. It was written by SEH, which is sort of standard language for cities to have, and there's a reason for that. Orderly annexation, uses like this. Had we sat down and really talked about what this was going to ultimately be and then entertained a request to annex it, I suspect we would have definitely annexed it. But that didn't happen, and I'm not pointing any fingers backwards. My point was more, hey, let's just be clear that as we go forward, we'd be better off to talk with developers than to simply say no and then have the exact same development we thought we were saying no to happen there anyway. And we have a degree of control, but we don't have as much control as we might have had it been in the city. I think you can make an environmental argument about it, Randy, on a conceptual basis, but fact of it is, I'm satisfied that it'll work there.
Not necessarily environmental, but
All right. Oh, with the septic?
Yeah.
So that's, then I was just finishing saying that there's staff and committee recommendation for approval. Now, any general motion?
Move for first reading.
Move for first reading. Is there
Second.
a second and a second? Any discussion on the first reading? Pam? Nothing? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries, and then, so that means that in 2 weeks, we'll have it on our agenda again for adoption of the rezoning. So first reading. I mean, they can do that, and it's not required, right? But
Well,
we-
actually,
it
the
is in our
process
rules, so
is the
unless we're
first
going
reading,
to
yeah.
adopt
A motion.
a suspension of the rules, this is our standard way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, see you in 2 weeks. Number 2 from the Plan Commission, and there are two, this item comes up on our agenda tonight in 2 places. One here at a recommendation from the Plan Commission for regarding the placement of a statue in Lakefront Park as proposed by the Boy Scouts of America. It also comes up under our new business, I believe, the policy, finance, the policy. Consider adoption of a policy for the placement and maintenance of memorials on park property. I might suggest, or I guess it's all up to you, we can talk about them as separate issues, because in fact they are separate issues. It might actually make some sense to talk about the policy question first, and so without steering you too much, do you agree? Should we talk the policy question first?
Yeah.
Postpone this one until we get to that and then come back to it? So let's just postpone this item until a little bit later, and let's work through this finance agenda. Applications for operators licenses would be next,
I'll recuse myself.
and Mr. Morissette is recused. We have a number of applications. The staff and committee recommendation is for approval of all the operators licenses that were applied for and that are listed on your issue sheet.
Move for approval.
Have a motion
Second.
to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the licenses are approved. We had number 5, changes to the employee handbook. This item came from Devin.
These are basically a couple of cleanup items. We had talked about it at finance. Did you have a question, or?
I did. I thought we had discussed at finance that in addition to checking the employee's driving records, that it could be a condition of employment. Did we not agree to that?
We said that, I think Al said was that if we find out there's somebody that we have driving, that we could potentially terminate. We certainly could add that.
Can we just add that?
If driving's a
Requirement.
necessary
Right.
requirement
Okay.
of their job.
I just don't want us to be limited by employees who
Already are.
have driving record issues and.
I just put in there, I guess, when Al
And a
said it, I was
condition of
thinking
hiring.
someone that was,
It could be a condition of hiring, but it
Or
could,
continued employment.
or can wait 2 weeks and we can.
Do you want to bring this back? Do you want to postpone it, let Catherine jot a sentence that's acceptable, and we'll take it up in 10 minutes or something?
Sure.
What's your pleasure? We can bring it back in 2 weeks.
There's no rush. I mean, we certainly want to.
I just thought we had
Right,
talked
at
about
finance, we
it.
said if your driver's permit, or if you can no longer drive and it's a requirement of the job, it's a condition.
Right,
of
so I was looking
employment.
at more current employees. I did not address
Okay.
new employees, but why don't we we'll fix it, we'll bring it back in 2
Yeah,
weeks. This is
that's
not a
fine.
matter of urgency at all, so.
Thank you.
All right, so without exception or objection, let us postpone that to our next meeting. Let's go to number 7, consider accepting grant funds for improvements at Prospect Park. Brief background on this item is that the former Hudson Hospital property became available. The city purchased it. The purchase price was approximately $1 million. We applied for a DNR grant for the purpose of helping us with that purchase. We were awarded a grant. The grant that was awarded was approximately $500,000. There were some strings attached to it. Those strings were that it could only be used as a nature-based outdoor recreation park. Things such as hiking, bicycling, wildlife, and nature observation, picnicking, cross-country skiing, and so on, trail activities. You can use it for roads, parking, utilities, sanitary, shelters, signage, things like that. We received that grant, we were awarded that grant, but for a variety of reasons. There was another string, was that we had to have a DNR acceptable appraisal of it. Long story short is we didn't do what we needed to receive the grant, and so the deadline came and went, and in April of last year we reapplied. Just about exactly a year ago we reapplied, we got the appraisals done, and we were once again approved. However, there's less money in the fund the second time than there was the first time. And so, this time we were awarded $53,500. The same strings are attached. We've already purchased the property, so the money now needs to go towards defraying the debt that we've incurred on the land. However, that will and can in turn free up some money to be used for future improvements at Prospect Park, is what the Finance Committee recommended. If we, at some point in the future, decide that we want to do one of the prohibitive things with the park, like put in swimming pool or tennis courts, then we'll have to come up with a similar acreage of nature-based recreation parkland somewhere else in the city to substitute it to satisfy the DNR, which would mean there's whatever it is, 4 or 5 acres up there that we'd have to find 4 or 5 acres somewhere else. That's the background. The committee recommendation is to recommend accepting this grant. What's your question?
My question is, I can certainly accept the fact of tying us down to this property more with $500,000. I can't see us tying ourselves into a DNR hoops to jump through for $53,000. I don't like the fact they're tying our hands on our own our park property, and I don't agree with this, and I won't support it. There's a lot of plans and a lot of time that the park board has put in developing a plan up there, and I'd like to see that come to fruition at some point without having to jumping through all these hoops.
Any other discussion? At this time, none of the plans that the park board has on their immediate list are contradictory. Before this became an issue, they looked at the Putman master plan for the park and looked at things that they thought were on a list of things to try to accomplish, and some things that they didn't think would be accomplished or maybe should be accomplished. And among them was the swimming pool was on the other list. Now, they're in a group that makes recommendations to us. So if there's something that any of you have in mind that you think are in direct contradiction to these prohibitions for a short term, I guess we should hear about it and talk about it more right now. I'm not aware of any.
There are none on the table now. And a lot of the big hitters, like the pavilion at the end of the pier and things, were outside of this zone. So when you look at what fell inside of this zone, like a T-ball field or something like that, is right now off the map. So
Yeah, but
in the short run, this isn't an issue, and it sounds like in the long run, if we really had to go that direction, we can swap other property and still have over $50,000 worth of money to invest.
well, for example, I mean, we've been obviously a river city for a very long time, and always have to do what the DNR says, and our own front yard is Lakefront Park. And quite frankly, I'm just tired of having the hands tied by the DNR. Just my opinion.
I understand. One property that I'd propose that could easily substitute where we asked to do that, and we could probably do it right away. I mean, you could take the money and you could notify them 6 months later that, well, you know what, we're substituting land over here. And that would be probably the school forest land that's not currently designated parkland, but is stormwater retention land. We've recently reached an agreement with the middle school folks, and they've got an active group using that for educational purposes and as a school forest, even though it's on city land, and it isn't really parkland, but we could make it parkland. So I don't know that this would be that hard. I mean, yes, there's strings here, and I appreciate your sentiment. Any other discussion? Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Anything further? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
5-1, motion carries. That takes us to number 8. Consider adoption of a policy for the placement and maintenance of memorials on public property. This item comes out of a application that was made by the Boy Scouts of America and the local Boy Scout proponents and Boy Scout troops to place a statue in Lakefront Park. There were a number of statues available. They applied in their application, they specified Lakefront Park. Didn't specify where, I don't believe, but they were granted a statue. The park board considered this in March. Primary location being proposed at that time was near the band shell. There was further consideration at the April park board meeting. At that time, the consideration moved to down closer to the arch and to the dike road, and that is the proposal that the park board approved. We watched this go on and began to research it. We discovered a couple of things. One is that state law requires that the Plan Commission give approval of the location for any proposed statue on public property, and as such, the Plan Commission has looked at this and made a recommendation, and that was item number 2 on our agenda under the Standing Committee's Plan Commission. But I felt as this came forward that really what we needed that we didn't have was a city policy on setting out some criteria for it, and so we looked around. Catherine helped me find some policies that were in place elsewhere, reviewed some of those. We ultimately took one, called it our draft, sent it around to staff and some others for input. We then discussed that at the Finance Committee meeting last Thursday, had some further input there from the committee members, as well as Alderperson O'Malley introduced a separate amendment that you had written.
Yes, I wrote it myself.
That he had written himself, and we looked at pros and cons of those, and what came out of that was the Finance Committee recommendation was to take the 5 criteria that Mr. O'Malley presented in his. We liked those criteria, and we amended it, and so what's before you is the draft at that point. I think the process here is this. We wish we had a policy like this in place to begin with, because it would have made it fairer and easier for the applicants to know what road they were starting off on, what was going to be required of them, and what the criteria would be. But we didn't, because we haven't had proposals like this before. Now that we do, despite the fact that it's already been discussed a couple of times at the park board, the fact of it is we're kind of getting down to laying down what should that policy look like. And I think we definitely need to have a policy, and I think we will have a policy when this is all over. One way or another, we'll have a policy. I think we could all probably agree on that. And so I think that's really first step. So with that, you've got the draft. I'd also point out that Scott's got a fairly significant difference with this draft that I'd like to give him time to present his differences and let you all explain what he's proposing on that. So you want to do that?
Sure.
First?
Actually, what I would like to do is open it up for discussion by making a motion for first reading, if that is in order. Is that in order, Catherine?
Oh, you don't have to have a first reading, but this is not an ordinance, at least
Right.
as proposed. It's just a policy, so there isn't the rule regarding first and second readings for ordinances and resolutions does not apply. It could be approved tonight.
Well,
I think
I'll make a motion to approve the policy for placing memorials on public property.
All right, so we've got a motion to approve the draft policy that was in your packet.
I'll second.
And Pam seconds it. Now discussion.
I did pass around last week the first draft of another proposal, and we went into it at Finance Committee last Thursday evening. There was some agreement on, as the mayor already mentioned, the incorporation of my 5 articles into the draft done by the mayor and Catherine. There is a significant difference between these two, though, and that is a difference that I agreed to elaborate on, and so you received another memo on this today. Sorry to be so wordy, but there was an agreement that maybe some elaboration was needed. The difference between the two proposals is that mine deals more with concept, and the one you have before you is more process, and they're not mutually exclusive at all. It's except that mine deals with the difference between representational artwork and realistic artwork. My ideal here is that we would be better served dealing with the realistic artwork. That is sculptures, if they are sculptures, that are of actual people, real people, living or deceased, who have made a significant impact to the positive for the city of Hudson or the Hudson area, citizens of this area. Representational artwork leads to controversy, leads to disagreement, leads to dissent, about which we already have quite a bit about the proposal we're about to hear next. The artwork that were representational sculpture that we have in the area, I use 2 examples. One is nearby, that is in the city of River Falls. There is a monument down by the river that is, I think that is, Catherine, stop me if I'm wrong, it is to represent the river. Is that not correct?
Yeah, the river and trees.
And am I off base by saying half the people really like it and half the people really hate it?
There was differences of opinion regarding that sculpture, yes.
Well put in a nice lawyerly fashion. The same thing is true with the Vietnam Memorial, which later on acquired some additional statuary, people representing people who had served in that conflict, not actual people. There was a lot of controversy about that and a lot of dissension about those statues being placed. They weren't of real people. And so my proposal calls for any monument that is to be given to the city, and let's face it, the city has no plans for purchase or construction of any monuments on its own. These are to be given to us in the future. People give us things for a reason. They have a point of view that they'd like to share, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it may not be the point of view of the people who own the land, and the people who own the land are the citizens of Hudson. So I would believe that if we were to say we want a realistic statue of, say, Willis Miller, pretty locally famous historian who just passed away, I don't think you'd get an awful lot of dissension on that. But if you do some representational thing, you're pretty much guaranteed to get dissension, and you know, you're going to have a lot of landowners, that is the public, who don't like what you're doing with their land. I don't know why we'd want to paint ourselves in that corner. That just doesn't seem to be very productive to me. If something is to contain a memorial to a group of people, it should be a plaque. And that is what my proposal says. If you will allow me the license on this, slightly, you know, more two-dimensional than three-dimensional. So that, although the verbiage would have to be approved by this council, that any memorial that is suitable could be placed in any one of our parks as a gift to the city, as long as it passes the council. It would not be a statue unless it is of an actual person, Marie Blakeman, for instance, or, as I mentioned, Willis Miller, someone who made a significant contribution to the city and about whom nobody's going to complain that they don't like the artwork. Well, that's, you know, how the person really looked, and I think that that's a better use for statuary and memorials, monuments in our parks. That's the difference between the two proposals.
Point of information, what motion did you, this or
The draft motion that
Scott's?
Catherine and
okay.
Dean had put
Is
together.
everybody clear on the motion?
Yeah.
So it's in your packet, and it starts at the top, draft 5.109. Yes, Lori?
Just a quick question. Your policy at the very end refers to groups notable to Hudson, fur traders and lumbermen. Would they have to be specific lumbermen?
No. Well, no, that's why I say they would have to be representational, because we don't know what those early settlers looked like exactly. It would
Okay.
have to be a representational figure, and that's why I noted those as exceptions. We can't have an actual, you know, 1750 fur trader.
But you're not saying we'd have to go back and find a picture of an actual
There wouldn't be any.
lumberman or fur trader?
There are no pictures of them. That's why it would have to be representational.
Okay.
Scott, as the author, I'm sorry, are you done?
Okay.
Is your intent, though, you know, I look at that and you say someone significant in the community. I could count countless number of individuals, leaders, business leaders in this community that have been Boy Scouts, that have contributed to this community.
And they could then have their realistic likenesses brought forth as possible monuments or statues.
I think one of your examples was Mr. Whitecap.
Exactly. If we want to talk about Boy Scouts, and by the way, I should point out, I'm the former Scoutmaster for Troop 140 here in Hudson. Lee is an Eagle Scout, and I'm sure that practically everybody on this council has some background of some sort in that type of group, whether it's Scouting or Campfire Girls or Bluebirds or whatever. This is not anything to do against Scouting in any way. Al Whitecamp, as Lee just mentioned, is an excellent example. I think rather than a point of view represented by the Mackenzie Scout, which is a fairly famous statue from 1931, not at all representative of anything particular to Hudson, but Al Whitecamp was. Al Whitecamp had a great history in scouting in Hudson, and we named Whitecamp Park after him. And a statue of Al Whitecamp with some, perhaps a couple of scouts at his side in Whitecamp Park, I think would be entirely fitting. And I don't think anybody would complain about that.
Let me try to direct discussion just a little bit. I don't want to limit discussion, but direct it. I sense that your comments are either arguments against the motion on the table or possibly for an amendment to the motion.
Right.
Do you want to offer an amendment?
Well, I would offer an amendment that the draft from you and Catherine incorporate the difference between representational and realistic sculpture as I have outlined in the additional memorandum, and that the city vote for those differences and for realistic statuary.
Okay, but so we're going to need to have a specific language. So would it be D and E both? You'd like both of those worked into the, D and E. So now all memorials will be in the form of plaques. So if to work that in would, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but where it says here memorials in section 1.2 of the draft. It says memorials can include fountains, statues, monuments, sculptures, plaques, murals, public artworks, plants, trees, benches, park or playground equipment, pavilions, or other similar structures. You would probably want to strike that and instead maybe substitute some other language like in the beginning of section D where it says all memorials and monuments shall be in the form of plaques.
No, I must have correct that because, and I know we're splitting hairs on this, but a swing set or a playground set is not a monument. It's a swing set. And I would think a good case in point is the pavilion that the Girl Scouts donated in White Camp Park. The Girl Scouts and their parents built this pavilion. And that's a pavilion. That's not a monument. The monument is the plaque that they put on the pavilion, which was quite small but very nice, saying who had built it. So that's the monument, the plaque. A pavilion's a pavilion. It's not a statue. It's not a monument.
All right, so could you restate your motion, then I'll ask for a second.
Okay, I've got too many pieces of paper in front of me, Mr. Mayor. The restatement of the motion is to incorporate the D and E from my draft proposal, delineating the difference of what types of monuments will be allowed on city land, in city parks.
Point of order, are we not on Al's motion? Did he get
We
a
are,
second?
but he's offering an amendment.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that's my motion, but which will fail if I don't get a second.
So I'm still
Well,
a little
Are you-
confused what it replaces, what are we replacing here?
All right.
We're replacing no fountains, what's
A
the?
fountain's a fountain. It's not a statue.
But it's
Unless you want to make it a statue, in which
It's
case then we're-
non-representational art.
Yeah, well, it's a fountain.
It's art
Okay,
in the form of a fountain.
okay.
well,
It doesn't represent a class of people.
It could be a leaf.
Okay.
representation.
As my paperwork says, its representational art is representative of a position taken on a class of people or a specific group of people. And of course, the council, boy, we're really getting far afield here, but the
I
council.
don't think so. I think we've got a motion, and there have been a couple of questions about the motion. Any other questions? Is there a second to the motion? Is there a second to the motion?
To the amendment, or to,
The motion is, right, the motion on the table right now is the amendment proposed by Scott. Is there a second to the motion? Well, the motion fails, and then we're back to discussion of the main motion. I see a hand raised by the, no? Further discussion on the motion to adopt the policy before you.
Now, listening to I understand Scott's argument. I'm having a concern that it cuts too deep, the way it's stated, as far as cutting out all. This is a policy, it's not an ordinance.
right.
Which means that even if the policy is adopted, it can be modified based on the situation.
This actually was my reasoning behind a discussion on sort of a first reading tonight, because I think that these differences can be hammered out.
What you were going to say?
Would you
something?
permit me a comment? 'Cause I'd like to wax eloquent about public art. When I visit the major cities, and when I traveled in Italy, there's public art all over. There's statuary all over. It isn't always an individual, and some of it makes you stand there and try to figure out what they were trying to get at. And that's not necessarily bad. And you know what? Art tends to be controversial. The idea that you would do art and it wouldn't be controversial, I think a lot of artists would say to you, hey, I did something wrong then. So, this idea that we'd never do any art that would be controversial, I think is, I don't know if I can agree with that. But I think what you're getting at is that you want it to be a likeness and not a representation of a person.
Or a point of view.
Or a point of view.
Sure.
But I think you're cutting, I kind of agree with Lee maybe, that this is cutting very broadly to say it won't be representational, and to use the analogy of some public art that was erected that was supposed to evoke images of rivers and trees and became controversial. Well, I mean, hey, when the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel was finished, it was very controversial, and now we go and gaze at it in wonder, but at the time they said, what was going on here?
Can I ask a question about that? Is that on public or private property?
Well,
it's on private property.
It's a comment about art.
But my point is this. As I said, this is more conceptual, and I think it raises concepts that might be incorporated in the final policy statement. It's not nuts and bolts, and therefore, I think Lee's right. We can say it cuts too deep because it is a broad stroke. It is to acquaint you with a concept that I think ought to be discussed further.
All right, we've got a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion?
This idea of I guess the question is, do we have enough time tonight to analyze how we stand on this without giving it some time to, are we ready to vote on it tonight?
Well, I would draw your attention to the final paragraph of the policy, section 5. In partly answer to your question, this policy replaces all previous policies, guidelines, and approval procedures relating to installing and maintaining memorials on city-owned and controlled property in the city of Hudson. And then it goes on to say the city may revise this policy as city staff, park board, or council deem necessary. You could change this policy. You could adopt it tonight, and you could change it next week. You could change it next month and next year. I mean, the idea is we ought to have a policy. The park board's going to meet again tomorrow night for the third time and have this on their agenda. And we ask them to give us guidance, but we need to give them a set of criteria in which to evaluate things and give us their input.
It's a statute. It's a great organization, and it's going to improve our park. This is getting way too complicated.
We're not talking about a specific statute. We're talking about a policy for all statues and monuments.
And it should come to by case basis, case by case.
Would you like to hear from Mr. Casanova for a minute? Any objection? President of the Park Board, why don't you come up and Pat Casanova from the Park Board, President of the Park Board.
Well, I just wanted to address the council as it pertains to the subject of, and I also put my artist hat on and think of if you were to adopt language or as narrow a focus and as tiny and accurate as that language could make it, you would eliminate the Vietnam War Memorial, Washington Monument, Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We used to have a cannon down in the park. And I think the policy gives everyone a track to run on that will still come back to this group and others in the future to accept, reject, change, critique, whatever. But I think it is a mistake on the part of the council to draft language that is that narrowly focused and hamstrings any project like that. And that's two opinions, Park Board as well, or excuse me, my own opinion as a citizen as well as being on the Park Board.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no.
No.
Is that 5-1? That's the way I heard it. Motion carries and the policy is adopted. If you'd like, then we'd go back to item number 2 under the Plan Commission. So while the policy was general and actually not specific to the Boy Scouts proposal. This is your first official chance to say no to this project. You probably have more chances. But it comes to you because the Plan Commission has to make a recommendation regarding the location. And I'm not certain whether we sort of accept that recommendation and place it on file, or whether we go forward and approve the location tonight. My suggestion to you would be not to do any kind of final approval of this tonight until the park board has one more chance to look at it, because honestly, there are probably some loose ends that need to be worked out under your new policy. But why don't you tell about your thoughts on this and the Plan Commission's recommendation?
Well, the Plan Commission recommendation is to approve the location of the proposed Boy Scout monument in Lakefront Park on the north side of the extension of Walnut Street, which basically is about 200 feet west of the arch, heading west towards on the Toll Bridge Road, some people call it Dyke Road. At basically the intersection of the pathway that goes northerly to the band shell and bathhouse. That would be the general location. You had a map in your council issue sheet. If there's any other questions, be pleased to answer it. Basically, my hearing of the Plan Commission issue is that Boy Scouts hold a long history in the community. That there's a number of Boy Scouts, number of residents and citizens in the community have been involved in Boy Scouts, and that they feel that the Boy Scouts are worthy of having a statue in Lakefront Park.
Denny, in our new policy, there are a couple of criteria that we will be evaluating. And the park board, I'm going to ask the park board to look at this again, and I'd like your opinion as the community development director. But there's language in here about whether the proposed memorial is consistent with the use of the park. In other words, you know, parks can change, and this one has changed some over the years and so on, but in its current use, would you see this proposal as being consistent with the current use of the park? Or do you have an opinion, I should say?
Well, I haven't formulated an opinion, but basically the statute area will be a statute plus a sitting area or rest area, which I think, as far as the location, people walking up and down the Toll Bridge Road certainly provide a seating area for those people that are choosing to walk. Somebody asked me my opinion when this issue first came out. My suggestion was, why wasn't White Camp Park being looked at as the location, and the memorial being named in the spirit of Al White Camp at White Camp Park was my initial reaction, to be honest with you. I'm not opposed to the location of Lakefront Park, but I just had a difference of opinion on where I felt this memorial may be best suited.
Any questions for Denny?
Looking at what you've got laid out here, it's fairly sizable. What's the square footage of the layout here?
It's approximately, it's about a 60 by 60 foot area, which would be a softball diamond size, 60 by 60, 360 square feet.
Other questions?
Actually, I mean, if you really want it, the original size of City Hall was 60 by 60 without the expansion to the west. So
One more time? The
original City Hall footprint was 60 by 60.
I wonder, I'd like to lead you through some things in the policy as the council, not necessarily Denny, that will go into our final decision on this. I think there's a couple of items that you just adopted it. I think they make sense. I didn't draft these. We adopted it from somewhere else. In section 1.2, applications must be able to demonstrate community support. My reading of that is that we probably would have a public hearing on this. Okay? I don't think it spells out that there must be a public hearing, but we have public hearings for much less important items, as we did tonight on a taxi cab license. And no one came, and often no one does come. I suspect if we had a public hearing on this, we would hear input. That's up to you. You can do what you want. The sentence right after that in section 1.2 says, the proposed memorial must be aesthetically complementary to its proposed surroundings. That's hard to envision until you actually see pictures and photographs and drawings. We've got a nice elevation drawing now of what the landscaping and benches might look like. The size of the park that's being taken up, it'd be a pretty simple matter to go stake it out and show it so people could walk down there and see, something we haven't done. Imagine, there were some pictures of a character on a ladder before to sort of illustrate the approximate height of the monument, and he was local. It was an excellent likeness of a local character. And we could do that kind of thing again if you want. I mean, tonight's probably the night that we could give some direction for what we think we need to be able to come back here at a future meeting and make a final decision on this. So as you go through these criteria, then, does it enhance the site? Does it safeguard our historic and cultural heritage? Does it foster civic pride in the notable accomplishments of Hudson residents? I mean, I think these are the things that ultimately the council here needs to make a vote. You'll each be asked to vote, not on those each, but in some total, whether you think this fits based on these criteria. And I think they're pretty good criteria to use. With that, the item on the table for tonight is merely the Plan Commission's recommendation on the location. But I hope that maybe one of you makes a motion in under this item for what you think our future action might be. I would suggest that it go on a future agenda, that it go to the Park Board one more time, and then we probably have a public hearing on it.
Move to refer to Park Board.
There's a motion to refer to Park Board.
And amend the motion to include a public hearing.
Well, that'll come after the Park Board.
I thought he was looking for direction on that as well.
I can schedule, there's nothing that stops us from scheduling a public hearing at any time, is there?
No,
Don't have
but
to
you
schedule
could get it.
tonight.
So I don't need you to make that in your motion, but if you'd like to, you could.
No.
Is there a second to the motion to refer to Park Board?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll send it to Park Board tomorrow night. You won't get much time, huh? Is it tomorrow night? Yes, sir.
May we speak?
Sure.
In terms of the size, it is 35 by, or 30 by 45. So it is about half the size represented, 1,350 square feet. In terms of historical value to the community, some information that you all might be interested in is that in 1910, two businessmen brought 12 boys to a camp south of Hudson called a Y camp to test something called scouting. And this was the first scouting in the Midwest. The first Eagle Scout was produced in this council on the Eastern Metro. And so this statue resides about a mile and a quarter north of where that first encampment was. So from a historical perspective, that gives it a little more, not to mention the fact that hundreds of Eagle Scouts have been promoted in this community over the last 80 years. But as we go through continued process, we will see you at some point in the future. Thank you.
For the record, we give us your address, Steve. Steve Wilcox and...
Yeah, 1228 10th Street.
28 10th Street. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. You might, but we're ready to move on, so come up here, give us your name and address, and there's going to be plenty of time for more input on this.
Absolutely. I'm Tom Smith. I'm a citizen, lives at 927 3rd Street, and I'll just say that I'm for the statue on private land, and you'll be hearing from me in the future on why I believe it should be on private land, not public land, and I'll even throw out an idea. Bethel Church has a wonderful strip of land facing 3rd Street, our historic 3rd Street, and I can even keep an eye on the statue right from my front porch. So you'll be hearing from me in the future. Thank you.
All right, that was number 8. We're ready to move on to update on projects. And Chuck Schwartz is here to answer your questions. What's happening, Chuck?
Well, for starters, construction season is upon us. Today they were pouring curb up on Heritage Boulevard in the Heritage Green development. Also, we're getting very close to seeing construction on Carmichael Road. The plan was to have message boards put up today. I don't know, Tom, if, did they get those installed today at all, do you know? So they'll be arrived shortly, and the intent was to give a week's worth of forewarning of folks. And so you'll see 3 message boards, one on the off-ramp from I-94 eastbound coming off that ramp onto Carmichael Road. There'll be one for the southbound traffic, which will be located north of Cooley Road, and then there will also be one for the northbound traffic near Hanley Road. A couple other items. Their intent is to start next Monday, and what they're going to do is close the outer lanes. And they're going to spend 3-4 weeks curb removal and doing that work. And then once the outbound curb and gutter is replaced and that work is completed, they will close off the center lanes and work on the curb and gutter and the structures along the median. From there, so month and a half, you'll actually, at that point, then you'll start seeing the milling and the overlay work starting. Okay, and a couple of items of note here. We restricted the hours of operation south of Hanley Road, but north of Hanley, they are allowed to work at night. And so they are planning to do a lot of night work, primarily milling, with the intent of potentially paving also, but their game plan right now is to pave during the daylight hours and mill at night north of Hanley. There will be, throughout the project, it will be open to traffic, okay? There will be some minor detours as the project progresses because they do have to get into intersections. And one of the items of note was at Crestview Drive in Carmichael, they want to, for 4 hours, temporarily close Crestview Drive from Gateway to Carmichael and route the traffic down to Center, so not allow through traffic at that point.
That would be done at night when we don't have peak hour traffic. So.
That's correct.
Good.
And also, we have drafted up some information for the website, and as necessary, that will be updated. And we've also forwarded some information onto the local newspaper. And I have made a request as far as the message boards on I-94. I haven't heard back yet from WisDOT on that.
Okay. I'm happy to hear about the night work. I was encouraging that last year, but actually things went very smoothly last year, and I don't think, did they do much night work at all last year? Maybe a little.
There was one, when they got closer to Carmichael, they did start at 3 in the morning or something along those lines.
Okay, questions about that?
Are we notifying any of the business owners on Carmichael or Crestview about the, have we sent them a letter or?
We are in discussions. We will be doing that,
Okay.
similar to what we've done last year, and it's going to be a joint effort with Public Works and Bonus Row.
Okay, thank you.
All right. What else?
That's all I have at this time. Is there any other questions for me?
Are those hotels gonna be built, or are they, do you know?
I have not heard the latest. As you know, last I heard, they were going to start up this spring. I can check into that and shoot out an email the next day or two.
Just curious.
In regards to the Heritage Boulevard, we have requested a revised schedule from them, just to see how they plan on moving forward. I have yet to receive that.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. That takes us to item B, consider amending Municipal Code, Chapter 187-19, Sex Offender Residency, Ordinance Number 6-09. After our last meeting, Kathy put out a memo. Maybe I'll just turn it over to you to talk about the changes that you made, and then we've got a draft draft ordinance before us. Kathy?
Yeah, the memo lists the revisions I made. It basically is what came out of the last council meeting. The whereas clause, fifth one, next to the last one, changed vastly to highly to try to remove emotion, but, and let's see. Changed the definition of youth, or actually inserted a definition of youth center. It uses the language from that statute, but does not refer. It's different from the statute. The statute has the age 21. Based on conversations in the council discussion, I think 18 is the age that is intended, under 18 is intended to protect children under 18. And also listed, there was discussion at the last meeting that that definition of youth center is very broad, and so listed some businesses or institutions locally that would be considered youth center. And my recommendation, Denny and I have talked about this, and he came up with these institutions. And if you have others, you know, certainly feel free to discuss that. But just in terms of notice to people who need to comply with this ordinance, and to give so that the city knows really where these residence restrictions are going to apply and these control zones are going to apply, I suggest, at least to start out, that youth centers be only those identified in the ordinance, so that the city knows, and any offender who is trying to comply with the ordinance knows where what these youth centers are, and you know where they are. That's that. I just added a sentence in the 187-19C regarding measuring the distance to make it clear that if that boundary line falls anywhere within a lot or parcel, that the entire parcel is excluded or within the restricted area. 187-19D also exempted persons who are required to appear in municipal court from the restricted zones. Obviously, if they have to show up in court, they need to be there, and the library is one of these restricted places.
One of my comments there was, do you really want to put 911 4th Street in there, or just leave it open to say the municipal building or municipal court? Because it could move.
That's true. That's a good point. I'd be fine with that as long as it's, you know, shown on the map, and we would know obviously where the municipal court is.
Okay.
Or currently located at 911.
If that way you don't have to update this.
Yeah.
If something happens to that building.
187-19G Chief Jensen suggested this after the meeting, that this approval business about if someone is attending either a school or a church-type program and gets written permission from the owner to be on the premises for programs involving that person's child, or if we're talking about a church or a religious institution, programs not involving children, that there be a date, that it be written approval and it be have an effective date so that the police can verify that. And the person also can, it just makes it simpler for everybody. And then at the end of the meeting last time, we talked about setting up a procedure. I think it was kind of in connection with the youth center situation, whereby any private properties that support one of these enumerated uses involving children could provide the same type of written permission allowing a person to be on their premises. I mean, it's private property. It would be up to that private property owner to police their own situation. That came up at the tail end of the discussion, and I just put in some language in
Page 7.
Yeah, number 5. It's basically the same language as the other exceptions, but it would apply to any private property on which there's an enumerated use.
So this would be like the YMCA, would be a private property?
Yeah, it almost, right. I think it was mostly intended to cover these youth center type situations where the definition was broad, and there was a question of whether, well, if the private organization is satisfied with having that person on their premises, that's up to them. I mean, that was the kind of tenor of the discussion. And it wasn't discussed much, so I just put together something so you could look at it and see if that's something you want to consider.
But that private owner doesn't have any obligation to notify other members of that organization? Is that right?
Not that I know of, although I have not, for instance, if they're offering some sort of programs for children, I just really I don't know the ins and outs of that. That would be an obligation on their part, not a city obligation.
That's the same argument as the church, just getting the approval from someone in charge to attend services. At least that's how I read it.
Yeah, and I mean, there is no obligation on the part of the city. It would be part of, it would be the responsibility of the private property.
Okay.
I don't know if it matters. The hockey arena is the Hudson Sports and Civic Center. And they say that so we don't have someone saying, well, that's not the same building. That's its official name, is the Hudson Sports and Civic Center.
Okay.
I said I don't want someone.
Yeah, no, we want it accurate.
You've got Elmer listed twice. I think that first one is Hudson Dance Academy.
Okay.
All right. A draft of this came out of Public Safety Committee. We met as a committee of the whole last time and had discussion of it. Some felt we discussed it too long. This is our work product. Catherine has incorporated the changes. What you have before you is essentially the draft ordinance forwarded by the committee of the whole yourselves at our last meeting. It is now up for adoption, and I hear a motion.
I'd like to move for first reading.
So we have a motion for first reading for adoption of 6-09 and a second by Mr. O'Malley. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would I take it that your motion, maybe I should have clarified this, like the comment about the municipal court scratching the address, I didn't hear any objection to that, so I took
With applicable
with that,
changes.
okay. And we'll do that. A couple of those other little
Yep, I got
typographic
those, yep.
corrections, you've got them, and then this will be back on our agenda again at our next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I'd like to share
Yes.
something
Oh,
with
yes, I
with the
forgot
council.
about that, and I didn't
Well, I
mean
just
to-
want to give the council something to think about before
Yes.
we discuss this again, because Denny Darnold put in, I think, an awful lot of time and good effort to create for us, to take our city map and create for us a sketch of where the precluded areas would be if we adhered to the 250-foot boundary for control zones. And that was put on the easel up here in the corner, and it was, since it was at some distance and it was just thin black lines, there was some difficulty in seeing it. I went up with Denny afterwards and looked at it, and I became a little concerned about the places where registrants might live, because when I got a close look at the map, I saw that it covered quite a bit of rental property and in the denser part of the city. My supposition, which is not borne out by any scientific research at all, but I think might be true, is that when these people come out, when they are released and are put into the registrant program, they're probably, whether because of spending money on attorney's fees or for whatever reason, they're not buying homes, they're renting. And I think that's probably a pretty safe assumption. Here is, and Paul, we're going to try to get a shot of this, and since we're not up on the screens, I don't know if this is any good or not. This has worked before.
You just dimmed down. I don't know if you need to brighten it up.
Well, I get dim some days. Paul, since we can't see this on screen, maybe this is fruitless. Come out and tell us if we're okay. Paul.
Chief's going to take care of it.
Thank you. I'm doing this so that you could see it on the screens above you.
So what have you got there? Is it marking out lines that are
This is Denny's
depicting
work.
the 250
Yes,
foot?
this is Denny's work.
There we go.
There we go. Okay,
Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing.
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
This is kind of like trying to pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time. These are the areas as outlined by Denny in his map, and he was kind enough to make a copy of it for me, a black and white copy. His was in color, and it's pretty hard to read in that configuration. So what I did was give it to one of my capable people and said, have the computer color in all the solid black lines that Denny has drawn. And here are the precluded areas where registered offenders cannot live under the 250-foot rule. It's a sizable portion of the city and a whole big hunk of the rental property. As evidence of how this might affect a new registrant who needs to come to Hudson to be near their group, to be near their therapist, to be near the medication, the doctor, in case there's chemical castration. When they look at this, when they're shown this map by the DOC, they may have some second thoughts about staying registered. I can tell you that only 2 of the registered offenders currently residing in Hudson live outside of these blacked in areas. All the others are inside those areas. And a new person coming to town may say, you know what, maybe I ought to just drop out of sight for a while. We have a system right now that is, thank you, Paul.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I think you voted in favor of the first reading, so if you'd like to now ask for reconsideration, we could open it up tonight. Otherwise, why don't you provide that as
I just wanted
for
to
everyone
think
for
about it
next
before the second
time,
reading. Yep.
because we've still got work to do here yet tonight. And I think that's a key part of it, and it looks like it's good information and a good presentation.
Thank you. I just wanted us to know it now. That's all.
Good, thank you. Okay, new business. I brought forward for you a framework of sustainable community principles. This came out of our Intergovernmental Advisory Council and a group of sustainable community advocates from the Hudson area that have been meeting for some time and have met with myself. They have met with the Plan Commission, did a presentation to the Plan Commission. They were hoping that we could incorporate some sustainability principles into our comprehensive plan as we amend it. My suggestion was, why don't we try to do something as a community together with our neighbors in the town of Hudson, in the town of Troy, the town of St. Joe. We talked about it about 3 months ago, and we looked at a draft that is very loosely based on some principles of sustainable community that have been adopted by places like Bayfield, Wisconsin, and Madison, Wisconsin. But our version is a little bit different, and we were able to get the support of the leaders of all our individual municipalities, and this is that document. And so in May, all of our local municipal governments, including the school district, will be considering the adoption of this joint type resolution. It's actually an individual resolution, and it doesn't bind anybody to anything. You'll still be able to make individual decisions. You're not giving up any kind of control. But there are many times that it would be important for us to be able to collaborate together. And we've talked about things and ways that we can do that, and I'm sure you've got your ideas, and so I would encourage you to consider adopting this.
So if I understand right, re-adopt this and it doesn't really make nothing changes in how we operate the city. So I'm wondering what is the goal in adopting it other than...
I think the best statement of it is in the very last paragraph where it says, "We declare our commitment to sustainability as outlined in the principles above and will consider these principles whenever possible in our planning, policy making, and practices." And while all local governments are already doing that to some degree, I wouldn't say none, but we do not have this formally adopted anywhere, these kind of principles. You might take it as a given that we do. A lot of people, when I say we don't, are surprised that we don't.
I just was thinking it would make more sense if we had included metrics, including metrics of will reduce energy use over 10 years by 5%. I mean, this is interesting, but it doesn't say anything other than, yeah, we might do that. It would be interesting if we adopted something that says we have a commitment.
Sure. And we could adopt something stronger, and I suspect the school district probably will adopt something stronger. But the goal of this is to try to find the common ground on which all of us, from St. Joe to Troy and everywhere, could agree. And this is what came out of this. On this, we can all agree. And I think, it's probably stronger than you might think. For example, reduce our contribution to the buildup of synthetic substances in our environment. I would like to see us work on phosphorus and the amount of phosphorus that's going on lawns and then going as runoff into the St. Croix River and Lake Malibu. And Lake Malibu is a natural resource that has boundaries common with our neighbors, both the village and the town of Hudson. And so there's one example right away where we could do whatever we want and we're only one part of it. But if we can agree on cooperation and collaboration on that, it would be stronger.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules towards adoption of the resolutions. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second.
I have a question. Is this coming from, this is what you guys are adopting? Because I have a problem with number 1 under now therefore extracting from the earth. I mean, as a general principle, yes, but I mean, we have wells, we use everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have a real concern with that.
I think this speaks to reuse, right? Reusing the things we've already extracted versus extracting additional material. That's how I read it.
Well, if you mean water in itself extracted from the earth does not contribute to pollution in the environment.
Well,
in
coal
itself.
And all that stuff,
Well, I'll tell you that this is not a state. I mean, for example, what thing that we are currently extracting would you say you would object to?
Well, obviously it's water, but
Okay, well, this
Are
doesn't
you
apply
talking that
to
in the
water.
future, we're gonna filter, which we already probably do, filter our wastewater? And are we gonna go strictly to that?
Other questions? I don't know the answer to that, Randy. We are already filtering, and we're doing our best not to pollute the river with what we put out. I'm told that, you know, we meet extremely high standards for what we're doing at the wastewater plant, but soon we'll need to meet even higher standards as we cross the threshold from being a Class 4 city to Class 3, which will happen after, I don't know when. After the census, we'll have the choice of adopting that, maybe, but the phosphorus standards are going to be imposed on us as regards to our plant, and one way that we can get some leeway there is by working on how much phosphorus we put in.
And I agree with that, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with this, basically the framework of this, but is there a way we can rewrite section 1? Where it doesn't say extracting from the earth?
And I'll agree with Randy on that particular case. That means uranium is a non-go. We're against nuclear energy from what this kind of says to me, because we extract that, and that's not good stuff after it's done, unless there's some more technology that's brought forward to, so it isn't a bad byproduct. I mean, that stays radioactive for, what, 10,000 years?
But it's not radioactive in the environment. It's contained. I mean, it could lead to pollution, but
Correct.
That's the same as if our wastewater treatment plant, which is designed to never release pollution, suddenly broke down and flooded into the river. I mean, that would be something not that you planned for.
Right.
We're not planning to release radioactive.
But I think the way it states is that we reduce our reliance on those materials. Well, I think it says that we don't want nuclear power.
I don't read that way at
That's
all.
how I read
but
it.
this will be a first reading as the motion stands, so there will be time for you to consider that.
It was motion to suspend.
Motion to suspend, that's right. Motion to suspend. My mistake.
Well, is there some potential to change the language?
There is. I mean, you know how hard it is to do something that everyone agrees on.
The one thing I would say about this thing is it's so generic, it doesn't hold us to anything. But from what I hear, it's step one in saying, okay, now can we adopt something more restrictive than this? Yes, but it is really not tying our hands in any way. But it's saying we're willing to work together with our partners to look for better ways of doing what we're doing today.
Well, I agree.
Is that a good summary, Mr. Mayor?
I think so. I mean, Scott?
If I could add a
Go
comment
ahead.
to that. I see exactly where you're coming from there, and I respect your viewpoint on it. However, I think that there are actually some teeth to be found in this, and I'd like to use as an example. Number 3, reduce our contribution to the physical degradation of our environment. I have asked in the past for the village of North Hudson to stop open burning in the fall. Particulates from leaves that are burning are the single most carcinogenic thing you can do to your community. All scientists agree on that. And the smoke goes from North Hudson, because the north winds are prevailing northwesterly at that time of the year, right into the city of Hudson. And they politely said no and kind of get lost to me in the past. And I would go back to them now and say, hey, wait a minute. You agreed to reduce your contribution to the physical degradation, and you are definitely degrading our environment. I think that I would rely on this in that next argument.
Well, each of us will define our reduction and target our priorities for reduction in our own way. So this doesn't mean that the city is somehow dictating to the village or vice versa.
But these are principles that we may ask each other to be held to in the future.
Yes, Lori.
Okay. And I shared my concerns with the Intergovernmental Advisory Council last week. To me, to put this resolution together suggests we're not already doing these things. We're not already striving to be good stewards of our environment. We heard that it's not binding. We're also not precluded right now from doing some of these things. I come back to the point of why are we passing this? It seems somewhat nebulous. And I know sustainability is the new popular word. It's sort of like diversity was 5 years ago. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, we just heard you have concerns about burning in North Hudson. we're not going to be able to go to North Hudson and say, you need to stop burning.
No, but we
Open
can now.
burning.
Excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it just seems foolish.
It does seem like this is a, like you point out, it's a public statement of what we're already doing.
Right.
Now, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that by creating a public statement of what we're already doing.
Is it really going to improve anything? You know, a year from now, can we meet and see measurable changes that have been made? You know, maybe we will, and I'll be wrong. But unless we put some, like you said, some metrics to it, it feels sort of.
Are you saying would you like to
nonsensical.
toughen this up?
What?
Either toughen it up or not pass it.
Okay. You know, what I hear from people is, who could object to this? And yet, I don't want to do it. It's an interesting quandary. As to the word sustainable, we spent probably half an hour at the Intergovernmental Council trying to come up with a different word and decided that we would try to remove it we'd try to find substitutes, but really, I mean, the fact of it is, it does describe what we're trying to do in a language that relates to people, and that this is what we're about. That word describes this to people right now who care about it, and so it's in the lexicon. I mean, you may not like it.
Well, I've never really heard anyone define it.
This is a definition. I mean,
And it's rather nebulous.
I call this the American version of this. I mean, when communities, when the whole thing first came, and you know, this is loosely structured on a version that largely came out of Sweden, and number 4 is different. I call this an American. I call this an American capitalist version of this. And if you read that closely, and you might have all read that and thought, well, who could object to that? Well, that's pretty markedly different from what was adopted, for example, in Bayfield. And I think it is exactly what we already do. And to say that this is something that we already do and it won't have any teeth, well, that's almost exactly like what we're spending an entire year on at the Plan Commission, a document that is our comprehensive plan that's full of things like this. These are principles. We're laying them out and writing them down. These are principles that we're going to consider as we go forward in our planning and policy making. That's exactly what all of those are. You're not bound by them, but you've laid them down, and you might not be here. It might be somebody else. They can at least see where you were at that particular point in time. Do you have any comment on to that angle of it, Denny? Because this did sort of start with their presentation to the Plan Commission in regards to our comprehensive plan.
Well, the issue of sustainability is probably, the hot button for a lot of planning departments in the United States. I just attended the National Conference for American Planning Association last week, and almost a half of the sessions had to do with sustainability. I don't like to do sustainability on a warm and fuzzy, and Dean and Mayor Knutson and I have talked about this. I mean, if we're really going to do something, let's really take a serious look at what we can do, where it's energy savings or it's policies upon which the city can become a better community due to the actions that we actually take. A lot of communities are not only coming out, have as an element of the comprehensive plan a sustainability plan itself, which addresses a number of issues which may or may not be a result of this. I think the mayor's attempt here is to establish a foundation upon which we try to build on this issue of sustainability, and this is the baby step.
It's a baby step.
However, you are including a sustainable plan in the comprehensive plan, correct?
Well, it certainly would
addressing
be,
the
sustainability would be an issue that we take a look at during that process. Absolutely.
Okay, where are we at here? We've got, we're still on the motion to suspend the rules, so if the motion would fail, you could still have a first reading, but further discussion on that motion to suspend. All in favor, suspending the rules, say aye.
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 And opposed?
2/3. 4.
Need 2/3. Was that 4?
I don't know. I've got a roll
Opposed?
call.
Hey.
Oh, I hear 2. Roll call vote.
Morset?
No.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Wyland?
Yes.
Burchill?
No.
Bernard?
Yes.
Brokaw?
Yes.
Okay, so the rules are suspended towards adoption of Resolution 4-09.
Move to adopt said resolution.
Have a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Pam. Discussion, Lori?
Question, are we going to have some sort of sustainability subcommittee? Are we going to have people addressing this? Because we could be doing these things now and we're not necessarily doing them cooperatively with surrounding municipalities. So what makes us think by passing this, we're going to suddenly start? Unless we assign some group and all the other municipalities do the same and we start working together.
You know, that's an interesting idea, because then it also allows us to publicize our progress on sustainability.
I won't support this unless there's a plan or an ensuing plan of what it's going to look like and how we're all going to work together.
It sounds like the comprehensive plan is going to do exactly what this is saying.
Well, but this is suggesting we're going to work with the surrounding townships and villages and the school district. So I want to know what that's going to look like. I'm not going to just rubber stamp this and we can all go home and feel better about it.
Well, for example, if we were to do something regarding carpooling, for example, which would be a pretty non-controversial thing. And as we discussed it, we said, why isn't there a central website somewhere where you can link up with other people and commute to work with them? And were we to do that, the question is, well, where would it be? And how hard would that be? I don't know. But it's actually,
School district does that.
School district does it, and they said that, but they haven't really ever offered it wider, right? They do it for their
I think there's some of the teachers that are involved, and it's not district-wide.
teachers. You know, how hard is that? I mean, that doesn't necessarily require a committee, but it will require some cooperation. I mean, if you want to form a committee, I can form a committee.
Well, my point is just, what's stopped us from doing that up until this point? What's prevented us from?
Nothing.
Nothing, but we haven't done it. So is this, passing this resolution, is it going to somehow trigger that activity?
Can I answer that question? I think it gives us a framework for the conversation. It gives us a basis to raise those questions. I don't know that I'm neither here nor there on whether or not a committee is needed, but we already have representatives to the Intergovernmental Council. That's you two. We have a representative to the school board. That's our school liaison, who can bring up these questions to all of the other groups. I think what this is a framework for conversation between the two groups, the 4 groups, excuse me, 5, I guess, including the school board. Where in the future in my case, I would say again, how about a burning ban like Hudson has? I would say that to North Hudson, because you say here, and what's your response? It's a basis for conversation and dialogue that may produce some pretty good results.
Another comment would be, right, we've been focusing internally. How do we reduce costs, how do we reduce heating costs, how do we reduce these other costs? With this as a framework going into the intergovernmental, you can now take, here have been our successes. And, we've committed to share these successes with one another. So this becomes a foundation for that discussion. Back to your comment, the foundation for what's working for us and how can we help you.
And I would expect that this document would grow as time passes, as we find out the things that work well for us to cooperate on. We've got to start somewhere. This is just the first step in my mind.
Other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Tied? Vote yes. Resolution 4-09 is adopted. Let's move on to a couple of proclamations. The first one is for National Peace Officers Memorial Day, Tuesday, May 15th. I call on all citizens of Hudson and all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 10th through May 16th as Police Week and to commemorate police officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to the community. The second one is to draw your attention to the annual Letter Carriers Food Drive, which is the largest one-day collection of food in the nation. Whereas the Hudson Post Office Letter Carriers, in cooperation with local United Way, America's Second Harvest, AFL-CIO, and the Campbell Soup Company will be seeking food donations from the public in an effort to help feed many families in need. I proclaim Saturday, May 9th as Letter Carriers Food Drive Day in the city of Hudson and urge citizens to recognize and support the merits of this cause by contributing generously to this worthwhile and effective project. What happens with this is that, help me explain it better here. You put it out.
Out by the mailbox or by the mailbox, and they'll pick it up.
Correct. May 9th. With that, we're ready to move on to quarterly. No, we did that already. We've got any alderperson, communications, and items for future agendas.
Just
Yes.
communications, the Public Works Committee has moved to Tuesday nights at 4:30 so we can comply with having enough information for City Council, enough time for everyone to take a look at it before the meeting. So we've moved our meeting Tuesday at 4:30, fourth Tuesday of the month.
The Finance Committee decided to move the regular finance meeting time to 6 p.m. before the council meetings. If there's a longer agenda, we'll occasionally move it to 5:30 to allow time. And if there are items that are not urgent or need more discussion, they may be held until the following council meeting 2 weeks later rather than that meeting immediately following, to give those who aren't at the committee meeting time to read the minutes and understand what the recommendation is. And maybe this would be a good time to schedule a special meeting to take care of our inadvertent leaving off the agenda tonight of the taxi service license. It's been suggested that on Wednesday night this week, a number of the alderpersons will be attending a function that's at 6:30, so we were wondering about a meeting at 6:15 Wednesday to consider granting a taxi cab service license for Taxi 1.
Fine with me.
Is it likely there'd be a quorum?
Yep.
So we'll do that. Any other alderperson?
I'd like to comment that last night the St. Croix Sailing School held a very successful fundraiser. It was a showing of strong community support, and classes begin June 15th.
Okay, good, thank you. Any other alderperson? City attorney? City administrator? Okay. I believe that might complete our agenda for tonight. We've got a closed session coming. We need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Section 1985, Sub 1, Sub E of Wisconsin statutes to discuss labor union negotiations with the Teamsters Union.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second. Roll call vote.
Wiley?
Yep.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Moses?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion carries, and we'll convene in closed session.